My team and I are always on the lookout for great deals in real estate. And while we're often looking at markets that are what I call dirt cheap real estate at $1,000 a meter or less, we're also looking at markets that are a great value. They may be a bit more expensive, but they offer outsized value considering what they are. In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 surprisingly cheap real estate markets that we've come across in the last year and that we're going to continue to watch for the coming year. Hey guys, I'm Andrew Henderson. We talk on our channel about how to legally reduce your taxes, get a second passport, find great new opportunities around the world. You can learn more about how we do that and how we can help you at nomadcapitalist.com. I want to talk in this video about 3 markets that we've been following over the last year that I think are cheap considering what they are, or at least there are certain areas that I found surprisingly cheap. Now, we often talk about markets like Phnom Penh, Cambodia, Tbilisi, Georgia. We've started talking about Armenia and others. And so those may not be surprisingly cheap to many folks. They might say, well, of course it's cheap, right? I mean, we're looking at other markets upcoming, like in Uzbekistan and in Cairo. And for those of you who are coming to join us at Nomad Capitalist Live, our live conference this year, Sadifa, our real estate expert, and also our research team, are going to be sharing all of our findings in greater detail about all of the markets that we're really studying. But these are 3 that I find interesting and I think have some potential. Let's start with number 1, and that is Istanbul, Turkey. Now, I know Turkey evokes different reactions from certain people. Some people are very agnostic about it. Others think that there are some issues there and that they don't want to overcome. But I think that real estate in Istanbul is amazingly cheap. In fact, I knew it was cheap. I knew it was one of the cheapest cities, if not the cheapest city in Europe in 2019. What I didn't know is you can find deals under $1,000 a meter. So Sadifa, who runs up our real estate division and is scouring for properties full time, is actually fluent in Turkish as well as several other languages. And she was going through all the local market listings using our local network of contacts. And if you have that, we found a number of properties under $1,000 a meter. Now, when I look at property, I'm generally looking in the city center. And so that's an issue that becomes a bit more difficult in Istanbul because there's so many different areas. That said, Taksim Square, I think, is generally accepted as basically the center of Istanbul. And so that's the area I'm looking around. I'm looking in Cihangir, I'm looking in Bomonti, I'm looking in Beşiktaş, in kind of those areas. There's lots of different neighborhood areas, Galata, I suppose, Karaköy. I'm generally looking, across from the old city. I don't think you want to be in the old city, but I'm looking across from the old city in the area where you might stay if you were a tourist. I'm not getting too far out. I'm not buying in these suburban enclaves that are often sold on property developer websites for ridiculous prices. I'm looking at the local real estate market where you can go and buy. And so to be able to buy, a 72-meter property for $70,000 is very intriguing in a city that, while not a capital, is certainly the economic hub of Turkey, a country with 80 million people that's growing. People are moving into the capital. They're creating new opportunities. To me, I understand politics can certainly ruin an economy, but I think that this is a country that does have a lot of potential. I mean, Jim Rogers was talking in his books about Turkey 15 or even 20 years ago. In books like Adventure Capitalist, and why going forward, after trying to join the EU, Turkey would eventually say, as I think they have, yeah, you know what, you need us, we don't need you. The story of Turkey is very interesting, and so because of the currency issues and others, you've seen property prices go to very low levels. At sub $1,000 a meter, I'm interested in a lot of economies. I mean, dictatorships, and military juntas aside, I'm interested in sub $1,000. But for it to be in such a large city with such domestic presence is very intriguing to me. Istanbul is very interesting, and they have a citizenship program. With older properties are the best deals. It becomes a bit dicey because things are based on appraisal. Story for another video. But if you do it properly, if you have the local context, if you understand the market, there's certainly a great salesmanship with a lot of the properties that are sold there. But if you do it correctly, I think you can find amazing deals. And I think if you're looking at a 10 to 20 year horizon, I'm pretty confident about it. Number 2 is Mexico City, and I was actually kind of surprised by this. I spent some time there. We've been studying real estate in Mexico for a while, partially in preparation for Nomad Capitalist Live this year, but also just because it's a very interesting country. You've got a large domestic market. You've got a market that, of course, is next to the United States, which has, of course, huge economic might. But I think that the challenge is Mexico City gets assigned a lot of the perceived ills of Mexico by folks who might go to Cancun, or might not even, but they think that places like Mexico City are untouchable. Mexico City has plenty of very safe neighborhoods. It's a huge city. It's the largest city in the Americas, I think by most metrics. And what was interesting is you have some very pricey areas like Polanco, where you can easily pay $8,000-$10,000 a meter. You're halfway to Singapore levels at that price for new construction in kind of the rich kids area of the city. Beautiful area, but certainly expensive, kind of like the Nishantashi of Istanbul, which is also probably overpriced for what it is. That's where if you're rich, you just live there, and you don't really concern yourself with the investment. But you look at some of the areas in Cuauhtemoc and other city center areas, kind of in the Reforma area, you can find some incredible deals. We looked at one deal for a property and ran everything through our lawyer that we've worked with there before. Everything came out clean. $295,000 US dollars equivalent when you converted from pesos for a 220 square meter property. And you're near the park, you're near the main avenue, and that was, I think, the best deal outside of some kind of weird fire sale or court proceeding or something like that. And while there are plenty of properties that are expensive, you can find some real hidden gems. To be able to be in the largest city, in the America, like basically in the New World, and to be paying that kind of price, I think it came out to about $1,200 or something like that a square meter. And to be in the action is incredible. Harder to find those deals. Definitely plenty of inventory. $2,000, $2,500, $3,000. Even at those numbers, by the way. One of Mexico's challenges. There are some new laws they were discussing about property ownership that could be a challenge. We're monitoring that, but I think that if they operate in a pro-business way, it's incredibly cheap. Look at property in equivalent cities. Look at Bangkok. $6,000, $5,000 a meter for similar stuff. If you can pay $2,000 for that, I think you've got a good value. I think there's plenty of value to unlock in Mexico City. Certainly some things to be careful about and monitoring where the country is going, but very interesting. Number 3 is in a market where I've invested, which is Bogota in Colombia. Now, this may be the least surprising, but if you know the data about Colombia, you might be a little surprised at just how cheap it can be, because Colombia is actually one of the freest economies in the Americas now. I've been saying that for some time. I think a lot of people don't know that. What I love about Colombia, unfortunately, is it also has a perception issue that is very, from a long time ago. And it's unfair. And I think more and more people are coming, more and more people are investing, companies are investing. I like investing in capital cities. This is kind of one of those issues where I know some people disagree with me. They like Medellin, they want to be on the coast. I like capital cities. You have not as big of a domestic economy, but it's still bigger than Georgia or Armenia. Not as big as Mexico or Turkey, but still a relatively good-sized country. They're projecting really large numbers of people moving to Bogota in the next decade. And so again, you look at the best areas, which are safe, the areas north of Candelaria, north of the downtown. Some of the best areas, 1,400, 1,500, 1,600. Again, there's plenty of inventory much higher than that. In fact, most of what you'll find, if you're looking especially on English language websites, will be higher than that. Found a place with some folks. They were looking for a house in Bogota. About $1,350 a meter in an amazing location, basically move-in condition, quite frankly. And if you go into some of the still desirable but a bit more local areas, even further north of where I am, you can pay even a little bit less. As with all these markets, any market where there's a foreign language issue, you really want to be searching in that language. You don't want to be calling the gringo real estate agents. The price difference is, in the double-digit percentage, and not like 12%, like higher than 12% in many cases. But if you know the facts about Colombia, I do think I would call it surprisingly cheap. When I went there, you have a city that's the fourth largest city, I believe, in the Americas. And again, you compare it to even a Kuala Lumpur, which lags all of its rivals in Southeast Asia. Amazingly cheap. I mean, Kuala Lumpur, I'd expect to pay $3,000 for what's $1,300 in Bogota. The currency certainly has been an issue. It's one of the lowest levels against the dollar it's ever been. That said, the ringgit in Malaysia was at low levels for quite a while. The peso was at lower levels for a while. That gives you good an opportunity to go in and buy properties. I think all those markets are what I would consider cheap. They're not necessarily the $1,000 a meter cheap where we're finding emerging and frontier markets at, but I think that they punch above their weight and are worth taking a look at. We'll be talking more about those at Nomad Capitalist Live, and we'll be monitoring them over the next year. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.